Now, I've worked with many beginner marathon runners at this point, and although I treat each one as an individual because not each beginner marathoner is created equal, there are certainly some commonalities that I see that I want to talk about in this video. It's really important to get started on the right foot with your marathon training, and so I'm just going to discuss some of the things that I go over early on with my runners that I encourage you to consider as you start your marathon training as well. So number one is starting where you left off. So when I talk with a runner, one of the first things that I want to know from them is what is their training looking like as we're getting started. So I ask them, how many miles per week are you running? Are you running all easy pace? Are you running any speed work? What does that look like? So really, this is one of the most important pieces of information that I can get from a runner because I am going to create a customized plan that is just for them. And so I have to make sure that I'm not giving them too much too soon, as that's very common in leading to an overuse injury. So let's say that you've been consistently running 15 miles per week. You want to start your plan at 15 miles per week, and then you can build from there. So a typical way to build, a common guideline is about 10% each week, but you'll also have cutback weeks in there about every 2 to 4 weeks. And so you don't want to be building any more than that. It's really not an okay thing to do to be running maybe consistently 10 to 15 miles a week and then suddenly you're starting at 20 to 25. That's way too much and putting yourself at big time at risk. So because there are so many cookie cutter plans out there and a lot of them are very, very good, it's just really a matter of making sure that it's good for you because it's not going to be the same for every person. So when you are choosing your plan, you want to make sure that you're thinking about where you're coming in at and that plan starts right where you're at. And that may not be the same for what your friend's doing. And this is where it's really important to just think about you and yourself, what your running history looks like so that you are doing the best training possible for yourself, keeping yourself healthy in the process and not getting burnt out or injured, and just really enjoying it as you get started because it's going to be a lot of weeks. And so you don't want to start out way higher than you should be. So the second thing that I'm doing early on is establishing a fueling plan with my runners. So I would say this is an area where a lot of people kind of give me that deer in headlights look because they haven't really thought about fueling in the past. And oftentimes runners can get away with that when they're training for a 5K or 10K, and they maybe have never really fueled during their runs or really took time to think about what they're eating before they go out on their run. And so this is something really important that I talk to those runners about and encourage you to really think about as you're getting started. You might be thinking, oh, well, my long runs aren't coming till way later, so I don't need to worry about that right now. But the best time to have your body start practicing digesting while you're on the run is right now in the early weeks when you're running the shorter runs. It's much harder for your body to do that on a long run, especially if you've never done it before. And so if this is something that you're not really comfortable with or used to doing yet, I would really encourage you to check out my video that's all about how to fuel every single run, because it is really important that you're fueling correctly before you go out on your run as well. And a big part of getting through those long runs and having energy at the end and feeling strong at the end is making sure that you're fueling appropriately throughout the run. So the third thing that I want runners to be doing is developing a consistent strength training habit. Now, I would say when I start working with runners, they're about 50-50 on whether or not they are strength training right now or not. I definitely have the ones that are like, oh, sorry, I just don't really like strength training. It's actually really overwhelming for me, or I just don't even know where to start, and so I just don't do it. So this is where I like to remind runners that less is often more when it comes to strength training, especially when you are embarking on marathon training and you're going to be running a lot of miles. We only have so much time in the day, but it doesn't have to be a lot. It just has to be enough, at least with getting started, that you are not setting yourself up for injury. So having consistent strength training, even just a couple times a week, is going to set you up for success to keep your body healthy as those miles build. So really, I just encourage simplicity here. So these runners who are looking for some strength training, I'm giving them a 2 different strength training workouts per week. They usually only last about 20 minutes, and they're going to be the same exercises week after week. And I just encourage them to add weight as their body is ready. So oftentimes, if someone's brand new to strength training, then they are doing body weight exercises. I'm going to go ahead and link a video here that shares the body weight exercises that I give, just thinking about it from the perspective of this is only going to help my running, and it's going to make sure that I get to the starting line healthy. So the fourth thing that is so important when it comes to marathon training, because you're going to be running so many miles and you need to be able to run longer and longer distances as you go on, is dialing in the easy pace. So most of the time people think they know what their easy pace is, but it's probably a little bit too fast. So early on, I have this conversation with people, and if they are already training by heart rate, because some people do, it's pretty easy for me to look at that and tell them if they're in the right zone. Or often those people who have been training by heart rate, they already know, which is awesome. Otherwise, I have a video that talks all about how you can make sure that you are running your runs easy enough, but essentially I would encourage you to go out for that easy run and then dial it back even just a little bit more. So by establishing this early on in your training and feeling really, really comfortable at that easy pace, just sets you up for success in being able to complete all of your runs. Because something that's really common that I hear from runners who reach out to me is that they cannot get through their long runs. Like maybe they'll get to 14 and then again the next week it's 14, and they're always hitting this wall at 14, which could come back to fueling like we talked about before, but oftentimes it's because they're just going too fast. And so when you have those longer runs on your schedule, it's really important to start out really, really easy. Start out slow for you so that you can finish strong. If you're negative splitting those long runs, you're in a really, really good spot. In general, what needs to happen is you're building your aerobic endurance, and this comes from running at an aerobic pace or that easy pace, lots and lots of time on feet with easy mileage or kilometers if you use that, right? Time on feet, that's all what it comes back to. And so making sure that you've dialed in that easy pace, you know what it is, it's conversational, it feels comfortable, you're gonna have a really successful marathon training block if you can do that. So number 5, it's really important to learn to trust the process. Now, one of the big reasons that athletes hire coaches is because they want to get from A to Z with as few mistakes as possible. And sometimes this is because the runner has a really difficult time trusting whatever training they've used in the past, and they just want to put their training in the hands of someone that they trust so they can just wake up and do what's on their schedule and not question it. So what's really important for you training on your own is that the training plan that you're using, it should be coming from someone that you trust, or maybe it's a blog you've been following for a really long time, and so you know the coach who wrote it, so that you don't feel like you're piecemealing all of these different plans together or scrapping the plan in the middle of it, because that is recipe for you to just quit training altogether. Because the number one thing that you guys can be doing in marathon training is showing up and being consistent. And so really at the end of the day, no plan that you choose or see is going to be exactly right or perfect, but a lot of times you can find a really, really good plan that's going to work for you if you just do what's on the schedule. So that's what I would encourage you to do is, as you embark on this, as you choose your plan, you just say to yourself, I'm trusting this, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna trust that it's going to get me to the marathon start line, ready to go and have a really great race. And lastly, something that I just think a lot of runners don't even consider is how important recovery is when you are marathon training. Now, when you're training as a runner for other distances, it is still absolutely important, but oftentimes I'll work with a runner who's maybe never really run more than 20 miles per week, and we're gonna end up doubling that in their marathon training period. And so in order for them to get to that start line feeling good and being healthy, they need to also make recovery a priority. Now, the reason that it seems like people really struggle with this is because because they're so excited about marathon training and they're ready to work hard, which they will need to, which is awesome. But then they don't consider how much recovery is necessary, and they maybe think that they're not working hard if they're placing too much emphasis on recovery. So an example of this is like if you have a lot of running friends and they're waking up really super early, then you feel like you should do the same, which is only good if you're also getting to bed early enough. So making sure that you're getting those 8 hours of sleep or as close to it as possible. I know we're all busy, but if you are going to be embarking on marathon training, you absolutely have to make recovery as important as the running, and sleep is your number one recovery tool. So a lot of people tell me right off the bat, well, I have all the recovery tools. I have a massage gun, I have a foam roller, I have the recovery boots, all the things. And those are great if those make you feel better, but they will never replace quality sleep and hours of sleep. And so that as those miles build, your body can handle it. Beyond that, nutrition is super, super important. My team met with an endurance nutritionist recently, and I recorded that whole thing and put it on YouTube. So from that, I think you'll glean a lot of really good information about what that nutrition can look like day to day, how you're fueling properly, and just how important it is for recovery and feeling good. Now, the last thing I want to say on this is recovery runs. That's a big part of marathon training. If you're not doing speed work, it's a little bit different of what that's going to look like the day after speed work, but certainly everyone is going to be doing a long run, and you should be doing a recovery run the day after that long run. That recovery run should be extremely easy. I like to think of this recovery run more in your recovery bucket. So it's the sleep, the nutrition, the recovery tools. It goes in the recovery bucket versus the running bucket. Yes, the mileage still counts, but I think if you can think of it from that perspective, you'll be that much more likely to go about it properly. Now, sometimes people like to choose to do active recovery in a cross training modality with cycling, with walking. Those things work really well too. But bottom line is that active recovery is super important. It's much better to be doing some sort of active recovery the day after your long run or a speed session versus just sitting around. So again, make sure when you're starting marathon training that you have a plan for what this recovery is going to look like for you. So I feel like my job as a coach of a first-time marathoner is to, 1, get them to the starting line healthy, and 2, set them up for success to have a great experience in the marathon. Now, time goals, we don't typically talk about too often. It's again, case-by-case basis, but when it comes to a first-time marathon, simply because until you've run a marathon, until you've run that last 10K of a marathon, you can't truly know what it's going to be like for you. So if my runner crosses that finish line feeling proud of their accomplishment, then I will feel like I've done what I was supposed to. And I would encourage you, as someone who is training on your own, to have that same thing and not get too wrapped up in a time goal. Just really focus on having a great marathon experience, trying to do the right things as much as you can, and then you'll feel proud of your accomplishment crossing that finish line as well. So I'm going to direct you guys to my next video so that when you get to the marathon, you will not make the same mistakes that I did in my first marathon. Thanks for joining me today, guys, and I will catch you in the next video.